So I think I call that a breakthrough.
I'm happy to hear about it because I talked to you right before you went to see her, and so that was
Oh, that's right. We did that.
yeah. You were nervous about it.
I'm nervous as hell with her. Both my parents intimidate the hell out of me.
So I'm glad that worked out. Before we get back into where we were at in the story, so just can you just do like a summary of your background before going to Reardon, which was which is an all boys Catholic school in San Francisco where we were both at the time. Before that, so you said you went to St. Cecilia's.
I graduated from St. Amelia 1 year, 8th grade. I went to St. Cecilia's from kindergarten to 7th grade. It was a horrible experience. I just saw Mrs. McDonald, my favorite teacher at St. Cecilia, Mrs. McDonald, and Sister Margaret were the two teachers that treated me the most well. And I saw Mrs. McDonald last night at Chris Cunningham and Michelle, soon to be Cunningham tomorrow on Saturday, getting married. I was at the rehearsal dinner for my buddy Chris Cunningham's wedding, who by the way is sober after decades of drug and alcohol use. And he's okay with me saying that. Anyway, get the point. So Mrs. McDonald was one of the only teachers at St. Cecilia's that wasn't motivated racially against me. And I mean that to say that at St. Cecilia's, when I was there, it was a hugely racist school. The kids would pull my ears to the side, and the older kids, I was in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, when the 8th graders would pull my ears to the side from behind me and say, "Whistle, little N-word whistle."
Wow.
I was that same age, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, when the 8th graders would pick me up, turn me upside down, and place me in a garbage can because I wasn't all white. And by the way, the people that did that were the sons of the SDI. You know the Sunset District Irish?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You dealt with them with Miles's brother. Remember that?
Yeah.
When they caved in Miles's brother's head,
right,
and put him in a 6-month coma. So this gentleman Miles, his older brother, was at a Sacred Heart game, and Sunset District Irish Sun. They're not even the proper gang. Do you remember? Were you around San Francisco for the Sunset District Irish whole debacle? The original guys.
Yeah, I mean,
I met one of them. I met one of the original guys. He's a nice guy now, but this was a racist, bigoted group that would harass young black, Asian, anybody that wasn't Irish or Italian got beat up by the Sunset District Irish. Their sons went to St. Cecilia's, and their sons hated me. They'd come up from behind me and hold me and punch me in the gut until I began to cry. They'd call me Little Red N-word every day. Every day at a Catholic grade school.
But so just kind of like a summary of your background. So you were adopted at what age?
Kind of like beginning to
yeah.
Grade. So, born in 6th Street in Squalor in a crack motel. Not necessarily born in the crack motel, but born in when my parents lived there.
In the TL.
Born in a hospital, but born essentially in the 10th floor of San Francisco, the worst neighborhood there, then the worst neighborhood today. Taken away from my birth parents, removed from their guardianship by the police and Child Protective Services because they would leave us unattended while they went to go do score and sell drugs. Here's the caveat. They had to go do score and sell drugs. That was the only way to keep a roof over our head. On the place we lived in, you paid by the hour, on the hour, and if you didn't, you were kicked out. It's a crack motel. It's a place where drugs are being used in every floor. It's a place where prostitution reigns free. It's the Tenderloin. And so, we're taken from that. Me and my brother Jordash are taken from that situation. My biological name is Giovanni Gabriele Prasad Fernandez, my brother Jordash. Exactly like me, he looked with blonde curly hair. And they took us, they put us in the system, foster care. In the first months in foster care, my brother and I both got bronchitis and Jordash died. I bounced around from home to home. I had basically a new mom and dad every couple weeks or days until and when Patrick and Deborah Hines took me in and made me their son. They are my mom and dad. And they gave me and my brother and my sister from 3 separate homes a beautiful existence. None of us looked alike. My brother's black, my sister's white, and I'm mixed. People who stared at us were very confused. And so grew up in a beautiful home. Grew up in a home filled with unconditional love by Pat and Debbie Hines. They worked tirelessly to give us everything they could. From the gutter, basically, all 3 of us kids came from the gutter. My brother born addicted to crack cocaine. My sister's mom had multiple personality disorder, drug addiction, primary alcoholism, and here we are. 3 kids from broken homes. 3 kids from parents with mental illness, raised by Patrick and Deborah Hines, and given a beautiful existence, a beautiful life, hope, and a future. at 17, for me and for my family, our world collapsed because of my brain. It broke. My brain broke.
Yeah, which brings us back to you were telling me you were at the bridge. Everybody had kind of walked past you, and now here you are, and you had just jumped, and you had a moment of a millisecond of regret,
instantaneous regret,
and like a sobering event.
The first article,
like you thought clearly, like the adrenaline, all of that just put you into, this is what I am doing. You took you out of that state, basically.
Do you know why? Do you know why that happens?
So we were talking about that, the adrenaline, right?
Now, the adrenaline, but here's the thing. 19 of the 39 Golden Gate Bridge jump survivors. 19 of the 39 Golden Gate Bridge jump survivors,
right,
have all had instant regret the moment their hands left the rail. And those are only the ones talking about it. I imagine it's the entirety of the majority. 19 of 39 is what percentage?
Have that out.
So 48% of those who attempted have all come forward to say they had an instant regret for their actions, which consequently was the title of the first article that ever came out about the story. In the it was the Examiner. The Examiner came out with a front page story when I was ready to talk about it, called Instant Regret.
Wow.
Because I mentioned it in the interview, and that's what they used as the title, Instant Regret.
So, and you and I, we've never even talked about this, and actually it was always something, I could never even see that movie, The Bridge. I don't know, it's just too close to home. And as I mentioned to you before, I know people who have taken their lives. From the bridge. But the minute you left the bridge and you had that moment, then what happened? Were you tumbling in the air? Like what was?
So I let go of that rail. As in, I catapulted myself off. I didn't get on the court and talk back. I was in free fall. The millisecond my hands left the rail, it was an instant regret for my actions. The 100% recognition I just made the greatest mistake of my life. It was too late. I'm falling 220 miles an hour, 220 feet. I'm falling 220 feet, 75 miles an hour in 4 seconds. In those 4 seconds, these are the words that rang true in my mind. What have I just done? I don't want to die. God, please save me. I hit the water. Upon impact of the water, my 3 of my vertebrae shattered, popped, exploded. My T12, L1, L2 exploded, hurting me on the inside. I immediately temporarily lost the use of my legs. I went 70 feet beneath the water's surface and I opened my eyes. I was alive and I was 70 feet beneath the water's surface. 70 feet from air. Without the use of my legs. But all I wanted to do was live. I swam 70 feet, only using my arms. It was the fastest I would ever swim in my life, to my understanding and recollection. I broke the surface because all I wanted to do was live. I didn't want to die when I jumped. I believed I had to. Categorically different things. I break the surface, I bob up down the water, and I try to scream help me, but all that came out was help, help. I couldn't scream, my lungs had been impacted by the fall. I had a contusion on my head, and I had sprained my right ankle. That's it, just sprained it. I'm bobbing up and down the water, and I am praying over and over and over again, God, please save me. I don't want to die. I made a mistake, on repeat, in a loop, out loud. Every time I come up above the water, I'd say it out loud, let's swallow salt, or go back down. I could not stay afloat. I kept going down. Every time I'd go down, because I was tired, having a violent asthma attack, I'd go down further. I come back one more time, all of the strength and energy humanly possible to make it to the surface one more time. After about 5 dips under the water, going down maybe 5-10 feet at a time. Come back up, take a breath, try to scream, can't scream. And I think to myself, as I look to my right arm was wrenched, my neck was wrenched, I look to the right, and there is a pillar. And there is a ladder on the pillar. And I'm like, yeah, it's 20 yards away. If I could just get to that ladder, I can hold on. Somebody's got to find me here. Someone's got to save me. I look to my left, there's a buoy. 20 yards to my left, there's a buoy. If I can just get to that buoy, I can just hold on to that buoy, I can stay alive. I go down again, I come back up. And I go, and I start to swim toward the ladder. I'm not moving an inch. There are 6 currents under the Golden Gate Bridge going in different directions. I could not move an inch, not a goddamn inch. And I'm looking around like, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die here. And I don't want to. And nobody is ever gonna know that I don't want to die if I die here. No one's gonna know that I knew I made a mistake. And that is when something very large, very slimy, and very much alive began to circle beneath me. And I start to punch it because I think it's a shark and it's going to devour me. I am taking my right wrench arm, which I can't move past here. I have no range of motion past right here. I'm going punching this thing, get away from me, get away from me. Didn't flinch. I slid off its back so quick, it's slimy. Which, if I had known anything about sharks, I would have known was wrong. A shark's back is a hide. It's like sandpaper. When you touch a shark, if you were to put your hand on a shark, certain sharks, you can cut your hand on it. I didn't know that. I'm sliding off this creature that is very slippery, clearly not a shark, but I didn't know that. So I wouldn't know what it was. I wouldn't learn what it was until a year later. A year later, I was in the show, Primetime Live, with a man named John Quinones. You know the guy, he's the Mexican reporter that does that. John Quinones. What would you do? You ever seen What Would You Do?
Right.
John Quinones is the host of that. So a year later, John Quinones is interviewing me and my dad, and I say on the show, I thought there was a shark beneath me in the water. People wrote into that show from all over the world when it went online with viral, before viral was cool. People wrote into the show from all over the world. One man's letter to ABC News stuck out. Now, the ABC television would never do this now, but they sent me a manila envelope filled with printed emails. Who does that?
Wow.
Printed emails. I mean, all they had to do was email them to me, but they mailed them. So I get these letters from hundreds of people who saw that show. And I'm reading through them, and they're all nice. One guy's from Italy, and he's a chief in the a commander in the army in Italy, American army in Italy. You know, all kinds of letters from all kinds of people. But the last letter was from a guy named Morgan McWard from Las Vegas, Nevada, and he was on the bridge that day with his mom. And the letter read, and I believe this is nearly a quote, if not very lightly paraphrased. Kevin, I'm so very glad you're alive. I was standing less than 2 feet from you when you jumped. Until this day, it's haunted me until now. By the way, Kevin, there was no shark like you mentioned in the show, but there absolutely was a sea lion. And the people above looking down believed it to be keeping your body afloat until the Coast Guard boat arrived behind you.
Wow.
Now, we are part of a Catholic school. I think that's called a miracle.
That is.
Now, I have a friend, an oceanographer. He considers himself all-knowing of the ocean. And he says to me in his British accent, well, let's go. He says to me about this incident in his British accent. So I'm going to do my best, of course, British accent right now. He says, Kevin, what happened to you was a statistical anomaly. It had to happen to someone the way it happened to you.
Wow.
He thinks that it had to happen sometime, somewhere, some way.
Well, that's I think the whole point of this this interview here is what's happened since then, and I guess the Coast Guard happened to be near there, relatively speaking.
Right, no, they're right there. They're on. It's something like called the Canali Point or something. I can't remember what it's called. Not Canali, but the Coast Guard office is on the Marin side, on the water. So it would take them minutes, roughly 15, 20 minutes to get to me. It would take them longer if they were docked. It turns out they were already nearby. They were on the boat in the water closer than it would. If they had left from the dock, I'd be dead.
And now, and your backpack was on the bridge.
Yeah, my shoulder bag. Yeah, with my note.
With your note, and the highway patrol saw.
So about 10 people were around me when I jumped. They all saw and they all reported it, right? And 3 of those 10 people reported the sea lion. Okay, so they all saw. They all reported that. But Kevin Briggs was my case manager, the officer of the Golden Gate Bridge who saved over 200 lives there. He wasn't the guy physically on the bridge when it happened. There was a younger officer there who came after the look. But what happened was, it's my understanding that the officers called the ambulance, but the Coast Guard had already been notified. Here's the best part of this whole story. This is how the Coast Guard were notified. A woman driving by at the moment of my attempt in a red car had one of her friends in that unit in the Coast Guard on her phone readily available. She had a car phone. Cell phones weren't that cool. She had a car phone. She picks up her car phone, calls the guy. One guy. He relays to the unit of the Coast Guard. He's on the water. He's at this position. Find him. He's alive. Had she not drove by the moment I went over the rail and seen me, arguably, I would have been in the water more than 15 minutes. I would have gotten hypothermia and drowned. I was only in the water for 12 minutes. 3 minutes before I get hypothermia and drown because of that woman.
Wow. So all these miracles, not to mention...
That's not the last one. There's one more.
Not to mention the way you impact the water, which we're not going to talk
No,
about.
we're not going to talk about how I hit the water because that'll give people ideas.
Yeah, and so all those things all had to happen for you to be alive, and they all did. Yeah. And there's one more thing?
There's one more thing. There's two more things.
Okay.
The ambulance, because the officers called at a certain time, were ready in there waiting. I had a violent asthma attack in the ambulance. They could not give me my asthma inhaler. They didn't know how my lungs were impacted. They didn't know if that was dangerous. They only gave me oxygen. I had a violent asthma attack from the moment the ambulance picked me up to the moment I got to the hospital. Code blue, I'm in a world of pain. Everyone's running around. Everyone's running crazy. As I was entering the hospital, it's my understanding that one of the foremost back surgeons on the West Coast was leaving. He opts to stay. Does a surgery on me that's in a medical journal, the first and only of its particular kind. The only reason I get the privilege to stand, walk, run, swim, do Pilates, do yoga, lift weights, and every other exercise I can find is because of that man and his team. They went into my left side. I'm going to show you, okay? Never shown this thing before.
And what hospital is this?
This is in Marine General Hospital. So I'm going to show you. I've got a 23 staple scar.
You mind if I...
Yeah, go for it.
Here.
Count the staples. 23 of them.
Wow.
Got it?
Yeah.
And for my camera here, 23 staple scar from here all the way to here. It's my ribcage. I know how many scars, brother. Did it work out? There you go. I know how many scars, how many staples, because I pulled them out myself as part of my healing. Under the scalpel, with the scalpel in my belly, I had another violent asthma attack with the knife inside me. Doctor removes his magic hands and saved me from any further damage. And 10 and a half hours later, I was refitted with a titanium cylindrical metal cage, 4 pins the size of my index finger, and a metal plate the size of my palm on my left side. The singular reason I get the honor and privilege to do the things I do. Mobile.
And you recovered remarkably
Very quickly.
Quickly, because I remember you came to visit us at school about 2.5 weeks later, I think.
It was 4.5 weeks. It was 4.5 weeks later that I could walk with a cane. Went from a wheelchair to a walker and a back brace to a back brace and a cane, and then right into my first psych ward. First psych ward of 7 psych wards in the next 11 years. Maybe we should say that story for another time.
Yeah. So now, going back to, you went through all this, you recovered physically, and then there was a long mental recovery.
That's still going on.
Yeah, that's ongoing forever.
Most likely. Every day.
So after all this happened, there became a moment where you became famous. This was an incident that was talked about, covered all over the world, because it's such a rare occurrence, and there is a fascination by people when someone...
Morbid fascination.
Yes. And so there was press that was covering this, and what was your experience as this was at that time considered a viral thing?
My experience with the press has been interesting. The press is by nature very sensationalistic because it's what sells papers and videos or whatever. And I've learned over the years how to talk about this in a way that is science-based and evidence-informed, that doesn't bring about individuals who hear the story get triggered and attempt. I speak about it in a way that is science-based, evidence-informed, and I have the only science-based, evidence-informed, as in studied, lived experience story that's proven to save lives. Our white paper comes out at the American Association of Suicidology this year and next. It comes out in 3 major research-based publications very soon, where we are proving that the way I tell my story and the way I reflect upon my recovery, how I stay stable, is proven to save lives. Let me be clear. I don't believe I save lives. I believe I spark interest in individuals through the press, through the media, and through speeches that give someone in lethal emotional pain the courage to do the work, to change and save their own lives. But people write, thousands and thousands of people have written to me to say, your story saves my life every day, or your story saved my life. Thousands of people have said that in the last 18 years. I believe that this story, and through the power of the press, has been able to reach, if not a billion, almost a billion people. 350 million people watch my BuzzFeed video, and that's more than the population of America. 350 is accurate. 300. It is at least the or almost above the population of America. 350 million people, unique individuals, have watched all 5 minutes of my BuzzFeed video, leaving 45 to 65,000 comments. 90% of those comments are positive. As in when someone writes into the BuzzFeed video and says, I'm going to kill myself, 100 people write back and say, don't.